Hey everybody, and happy Friday to you. Thank you so much for coming to hang out with me today. I'm certainly glad you're here. Last Friday, I shared a lesson entitled The Big Chop, and depending on whether or not we're fruit producers, God will either cut us back or cut us off, and I highly encourage you to check that lesson out if you haven't done so already. We're going to go ahead and jump right into today's lesson, which is going to be a two-part series to close this year out, Get Her and Keep Her. Today's lesson has a subtitle of Your Eyes Are Not Wise. So let me start by asking a question. Have you ever made a decision based on how you felt in the moment? Maybe you were desperate or you felt pressured by someone to do something. Have you ever connected yourself to people despite red flags? Entered a new relationship before you healed from the last one? Maybe you spent money on some retail therapy but you couldn't afford it. Have you ever jumped ahead of God and did it your own way because you got tired of waiting? Have you ever relied on your own wisdom and ignored the voice of Holy Spirit who told you not to do it? And how did that work out for you? Because it did not work out for me. I made a complete mess of things, and I had to ask God to forgive me and pray that He would be merciful enough to untangle the knots in my life that I created. The enemy always appeals to our senses because he knows exactly what to present to us, to place before our eyes, the thoughts to put in our mind, the temptation to throw our way so that we will take matters into our own hands. He is a pro at using his own wisdom. That's how he got kicked out of heaven, and it did not end well for him, and he wants the same outcome for you and for me. He absolutely loves it when we depend on our own wisdom. When we're impatient, we're desperate, we want it to happen so bad that we're willing to do whatever it takes. He knows that apart from God and God's wisdom, we're going to fall into every trap that he has set for us because he studied us. He knows what we like as adults. He knows that we don't like to wait. We're independent. We like to be in control. We want to live life on our own terms, and we don't want God up in our business like that. The enemy knows that we want the quickest solution to our problem and the easiest remedy to our pain. Waiting? What is that? If it looks good and feels good, then we're going to jump in with both feet. And when our plan fails, then we'll try to get God involved. There's a reason why that God tells us in Proverbs chapter 3 not to lean on our own understanding. It's because we don't know as much as we think we do. Now, yes, we may be intelligent, but it takes more than brain power to make the right decision. It takes the wisdom of the all-seeing, all-knowing, ever-present God. And even though we're grown in age, we don't know enough to make decisions apart from him. Proverbs chapter 16, verse 25, the Amplified Bible states, "There is a way which seems right to a man and appears straight before him, but its end is the way of death." Being wise in your own eyes says, you know what, God, you don't know what's best for me. You're taking too long. What you gave me is not enough. I want more. Life isn't turning out how I envisioned, so I'm going to take matters into my own hands and I'm going to make it happen myself. The enemy, he loves it when we have a Burger King type mentality, meaning I'm going to do it my own way because it's my life and I'll live it how I want to. He is totally fine with you doing your own thing because he knows that destruction is the end result and he gets a kick out of seeing us fall. But lest we forget, God is the only one who knows the end from the beginning. He created us. So if we're going to trust anyone to help us make the right decision, then it ought to be him. Proverbs chapter 3, verses 7 through 8, the New King James Version states, "Do not be wise in your own eyes. Fear the Lord and depart from evil. It will be health to your flesh and strength to your bones." There are a few people in the Bible who were impressed by their own wisdom and let their eyes deceive them. The first one is Eve. She let her eyes and her ears convince her that God was hiding something from her. In Genesis 3 and 6, it tells us that she saw that the tree was beautiful and the fruit looked delicious, and she wanted the wisdom that it would give to her. So she took the suggestion of the serpent and she did the exact opposite of what God told her not to do, and relying on her own wisdom, it cost her more than she bargained for. Another example is David. His eyes were full of lust when he saw a married woman by the name of Bathsheba. He used his own wisdom, made a hasty decision to sleep with her, and it left a trail of damaged lives and even affected his bloodline. Samson, he laid eyes on Delilah, fell in love with her, and he thought it was a bright idea to tell her where his strength came from. His wisdom cost him his life. The prodigal son, he just knew that he was missing out on living life, living his best life. So he made this decision to get his inheritance early, leave home, go party and live it up. But the temptations of the world, it proved to be too much for him. He spent every dime he had. He went from riches to rags, literally. His wisdom and the lust of his eyes caused him to hit rock bottom. The wisest king to ever live, which was Solomon. When he was young, he became king and he told God, I need your wisdom. I have never led people before. I don't know how I'm supposed to do this, so show me. He realized that his capability could only be found in God. But just like his father David, many years later, he turned a deaf ear to God's wisdom and chose to compromise. He allowed his eyes to deceive him. He married foreign women, started worshiping their gods, something that God strictly told him not to do. And Solomon's life gives us a clear contrast of what will happen when we rely on our wisdom versus God's wisdom. We can no longer afford to do whatever feels right in the moment or take shortcuts to get what we want. We don't have to be desperate for anything or anyone because God is not on a timetable and he never runs out of anything. If it is yours, then trust me, it is yours. If it's your time, then he will see to it that it happens. But jumping ahead without consulting him will end up hurting you. And I get it. No one likes to wait, me included, but it's even worse to wish that you had. And godly wisdom normally will require that you wait, weigh the options, count up the costs, and wait for God to answer. And we don't like any of that. Maybe there's some things that you want right now, but God's wisdom is saying no or not yet. And there have been times in my life when I didn't want to wait. I thought there were no other options. So I used my own wisdom and I did what I thought was right in the moment, but I wish I hadn't. At the time it seemed right, it felt right, but doing it my way with my wisdom set me way, way back. As believers, we can't trust our eyes, our intellect, our emotions, society, and most of the time certain people. Now I'm all for wise counsel because Proverbs 11:14 tells us that there is safety in a multitude of counselors, but just make sure the person you're getting your advice from got their wisdom from God. Because left to our own wisdom, even on our best day, we are not wise enough. We don't know enough. We can't see the future. We don't know what lies ahead. We don't know what God has planned for us, nor do we know what the enemy is plotting against us. And that's why the Bible tells us to acknowledge God in all of our ways, not some of them. We just can't acknowledge him every now and then and think it will somehow work out, because it won't. In closing, we must never, ever, ever, ever make decisions based on our feelings. Pray about it, ask God for his wisdom, sleep on it. If you feel rushed or pressured, then that is your sign that you need to run straight to God. Talk to him, let him calm your anxiety. Get as much wisdom as you need, but do not make any decisions without his wisdom and his peace. Asking God for wisdom and actually using it will keep us out of a whole lot of places, situations, and relationships that we shouldn't be in. And I've lived long enough to know that my wisdom is not worth 2 cents. The consequences of my poor choices humbled me. And had I asked God for wisdom before making some major decisions in my life, things would have turned out differently. Now, I can't change the past, but you best believe I include him now, and I plan to do so for the rest of my life, because I don't have time to go down the wrong path and set myself up to fail, because time is of essence. Ephesians chapter 5, verses 15 through 16, the NIV translation states, "Be very careful then how you live, not as unwise, but as wise, making the most of every opportunity, because the days are evil." Our prayer should be, God, I won't know if you don't teach me. I won't know what to do if you don't show me, and I will be lost if you don't lead me. God's wisdom is the principal thing. Get her and keep her. Trust me, you never want to be without it. Thank you so much for sticking around until the end. If you are new, then welcome. And if you're here Friday after Friday, please know that I'm honored. I appreciate the support. If you have not subscribed yet, please consider doing so. I would love for you to join our community. And I hope you will come back on next Friday. This will be my final lesson of 2024. And I'll close out this 2-part series with a lesson entitled, Get Her and Keep Her. Who is she? Solomon calls her wisdom. So come back next Friday and we're going to talk about it. In the meantime, remember that you matter. In Christ, you are enough. You are never alone. And most importantly, you are eternally and unconditionally loved. And I hope to see you on next Friday. Take care, guys.